Also, like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate.
Coco Gauff is the world number 2. Elena Rybakina is the reigning Wimbledon champion. Aryna Sabalenka sits on top of the rankings, and yet the room reoriented. The story you're about to hear is not about a match. It is about a ticket. And what a ticket can prove about a sport that is still trying to understand what just arrived. Subscribe right now if you have been watching this wave build from the beginning, because the number this week is 30 minutes, and 30 minutes changes everything. Let's go. The 5 days that produce this moment are worth mapping carefully, because they compress an entire career shift into something you can hold in one hand. On August 3rd in Washington, Eala defeated world number 3 Jessica Pegula 4-6, 6-4, 6-0 and became the first player from the Philippines, man or woman, in the history of professional tennis to win a WTA Tour singles title. 2 days later, she walked onto center court in Toronto for the first time in her life in front of a sold-out crowd and beat Alicia Parks in 3 sets. 2 days after that, on August 7th, going into the 8th, she survived Caddy McNally 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 playing on a foot that required multiple medical timeouts. Champion on Monday, sellout on Wednesday, survivor on Friday, that is the compression. 3 data points in 5 days that together tell you something the rankings alone never could. Now here is the tension inside this story, and it is important to state it correctly because it is easy to misstate. This is not Eala versus Gauff. Coco Gauff has been one of the loudest public voices celebrating what Eala is building. At a press conference during this exact stretch of the North American swing, Gauff said, and this is verbatim, sourced through Tennis World USA and cross-cited by Yahoo Sports, one player can really bridge the gap between a sport and a nation that maybe hadn't had that representation before. Gauff has told reporters she loves playing in the environments Eala's crowds create. She has compared the atmosphere to basketball, to a World Cup, so the tension is not personal, the tension is structural. For 20 years, the ticket economy of a WTA 1,000-level event has followed a predictable order. The highest seeds sell the fastest, the Americans sell fastest in North America. The reigning Slam champions sell fastest anywhere. Eala broke that order without asking it for permission. Her round of 32 on the Friday night session went before Gauff's center court appearances filled. Gauff's earlier Toronto match was in fact scheduled on the grandstand court, not center. This is not a slight to Gauff, who is number 2 in the world. It is a data point about a new kind of gravity that has arrived in tennis and does not yet fit the old spreadsheets. The evidence for that gravity begins with the market itself. 3,100 tickets in 30 minutes. That is not a fan club phenomenon, that is a market signal. The kind of throughput that resale platforms and event operators track very carefully because it tells them where to point money next year. And the room those tickets filled was not a side stage. SoBay Stadium center court seats 10,077 people. The Filipino community filled it. They filled it again for the second round. Multiple secondary reports tracked resale prices climbing sharply above face value, with baseline seating that had been listed near $40 reportedly moving for triple that on aftermarket sites. The direction of that pricing is not in dispute. The demand outstripped the supply, and it did it in the largest room the tournament owns. Then there is the man watching from the operations office. Carl Heil has run this tournament for close to 2 decades. He has watched Serena Williams play here, Venus Halep, Osaka, Swiatek. He has seen what a superstar crowd looks like in Toronto. And he told ABS-CBN on August 6th that Alex Eala is an absolute blessing to tennis, framing the Filipino community's turnout as something that had been building for months. Not something that arrived the week of the tournament, not a viral reaction to the DC Trophy, but something his operations team had been watching accumulate since the schedule was first announced. His exact framing on record, the 10,077-seat center court sold out for her opening match, and he had not seen this specific pattern in his 20 years on the job. That is Tier 1 authority. That is not a fan account or a sponsor's press release. That is the person whose job depends on knowing what a room will do, standing at a microphone telling reporters that his room did something new. And this is the operational detail that matters most, buried inside what Heil said. The Filipino community had been reaching out to the tournament for months in advance, not the week of, not after the DC title dropped. Months. That means the ticket rush was not a viral reaction to a headline. It was an infrastructure that had been quietly assembling since before Eala's ranking justified it, waiting patiently for the schedule to drop. When the schedule dropped, the infrastructure activated. 3,100 seats, 30 minutes, gone. Now here's what she actually did on court to earn this, because a ticket rush not backed by a scoreline is a novelty act. Eala is backed. On August 3rd in Washington, she came from a set down against Eala, the world number 3, winning the last 12 of 14 games to close out 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. That was her 7th top 10 win of the year, tied for the most on the entire tour. 2 days later in Toronto, she became the first Filipino man or woman ever to win a main draw match at the National Bank Open. She said afterward to WTA.com that Toronto felt like home, that experiencing a city that multicultural for the first time while being surrounded by people who already knew her name was something she had not expected. That is not a rehearsed champion line. That is a 20-year-old locating herself inside a room she has never been in before and finding the room had been waiting for her. Then came the ranking that finally caught up to the story, world number 20, career high, first Filipino ever to reach the top 20 in the Open era. Prize money for the year sitting at just over $1.5 million US. Season record 35 wins and 18 losses, 1 title. That is the arithmetic of a player whose room finally matches her ranking and whose ranking finally matches her results. For most of her career, one of those 3 numbers has been ahead of the others. This week in Toronto, they lined up, and the moment they lined up, the ticket vanished in 30 minutes. The climax of the evidence, though, the moment that stays with anyone who actually watched it, was not the sellout, and it was not the ranking update. It was what happened on court on August 7th going into the 8th against Katie McNally. Eala won the first set 6-3, she broke early in the second, and then something in her right foot went wrong. The National Bank Open's own official recap described her requiring treatment multiple times, grimacing visibly, her movement clearly hampered. She twice let break leads slip away. McNally broke her in the 12th game to force a decider. This is the part where in a normal script, the sold-out sensation retires and the crowd goes home quietly. Eala did not retire. She reset, she broke McNally in the opening game of the 3rd set, held that single break the entire way through, and closed out the match 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. The stadium that had bought its tickets in 30 minutes did not sit down for the entire 3rd set. Not once. If you want the single image that condenses this entire story into one frame, it is that one. A player who should not have been the biggest ticket in the building, playing on a foot that should not have been able to carry a match through 3 sets, being carried instead by a room she had built one convert at a time across the previous 8 months of her career. The foot was not what held. The room held, and the room held because 3,100 people made sure of it 30 minutes after the schedule dropped. Goff, the peer voice that carries the most weight in this specific conversation, added the cleanest diagnosis of any voice in the story this week. One player can really bridge the gap between a sport and a nation that maybe hadn't had that representation before. That is not a compliment issued between rivals. That is the world number 2, standing at a microphone, describing a structural shift she is watching happen in real time around her. And 4 different players across this stretch of the North American swing, Gauff, Fernandez, Eala, and others, have each offered some version of the same unprompted observation. The atmosphere Eala carries is not standard tennis atmosphere. It is something the tour has not calibrated for yet. When 4 players from 4 different countries across 4 different press conference rooms arrive at the same conclusion without being asked, that conclusion has stopped being an opinion. Now look at where the story is heading, because the next match is its own separate event. The round of 16 against Leylah Fernandez. Fernandez has a Filipino mother. Fernandez is Canadian. Toronto is her home court in the most literal sense. The stadium for that match will contain 2 heritages inside a single roar, and the ticket for that session is the most emotionally loaded piece of paper in North American women's tennis this month. Eala and Fernandez already met in Washington 10 days ago. Eala won in a first-set tiebreak. If Eala wins in Toronto, the potential quarterfinal is Coco Gauff. If that match happens, the ticket for that session will be the most watched inventory movement in the sport this summer. Beyond Toronto, Cincinnati is next, then the US Open. Every WTA 1000 tournament from here to the end of the hardcourt swing is now looking at the Toronto data. 3,100 tickets in 30 minutes, a 10,000-seat room filled for a 25th seeds opening round, and recalculating their own scheduling assumptions accordingly. That is not a prediction. That is what happens when a market signal this loud arrives in an industry that runs on ticket data. The vulnerability underneath all of this is real and worth naming, because this story earns nothing by pretending otherwise. The foot did not heal itself between the 2nd and 3rd sets against McNally. It just held. There is less than 48 hours between that match and the round of 16. Earlier this season, Eala lost to Gauff in Dubai 6-0, 6-2, a reminder that on a bad day against the wrong matchup, the gap is still real and still large. She is not the finished article. She is a 20-year-old in the middle of a compression that has taken her from ranked in the 50s to a top 20 tour champion inside a few months. And the body is being asked to keep pace with something that is essentially a cultural event moving through it. But the fact that she is still winning on a foot that required in-match treatment in front of a crowd that would not sit down is not a sign that she has arrived. It is a sign that she is still arriving in public in real time with the whole room watching. So look at the room she is in right now. She is in a room where a tournament director with 2 decades of experience is on record saying he has never seen this before. She is in a room where the world number 2 is describing her unprompted as the person bridging a sport and a nation. She is in a room where the ticket for her session in the largest court the tournament owns was gone in the time it takes to eat dinner. She is in a room 10,077 seats deep that did not exist for any Filipino athlete before her because she is the one who built it. 3 months ago, that room was empty. This week, it was the loudest room in the tournament, and it stayed loud even when her foot could not carry her because by then the room was carrying her. That is what the ticket at the top of this story was proof of. Not that Eala beat Gauf on the schedule, because that framing misses the point entirely. The point is that the schedule now has 2 headliners where it used to have 1. And the second one arrived undeniably on a Friday night in Toronto in a session that sold out before dinner. The room she is in now is a room she does not have to earn her way back into. She lives there. So here is what I want from the comments right now. Fernandez in the round of 16, does Eala close it out and set up a potential Gauf quarterfinal, or does the foot finally cost her the match she cannot afford to lose on one leg? Drop your prediction with a scoreline attached before the match starts, and if that quarterfinal happens, drop who you think wins that one too. Subscribe and hit the bell right now. We are covering the Fernandez match, the Gauf quarterfinal if it happens, and every scheduling decision, every ticket surge, and every data point this tournament produces between now and the final. Because if the schedule drops again tomorrow, that ticket would be gone in 30 minutes too, and so will the window to say you were here before the rest of the world caught up.